you know, funded by taxation. But haven't we already established that this is immoral? Well, this
No,
taxation?
I've only agreed that taxation is immoral if it's for a redistribution of wealth
Why
or
make
for
it?
improper functions. I'm not saying, because if you agree that you need a service, is it reasonable for you to pay for that service, or you expect the service to be provided for free?
Not if you well, if you've contracted for the service, of course.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The people, through their representatives, contracted to have the service. At that time, everybody agreed that we needed a government.
Everybody agrees.
Absolutely, there aren't any anarchists saying that we don't want to have any government at all. It seemed obvious to everyone, and it still seems obvious to me, that in order to optimize your possibility of a happy life, to have optimal protection, you need to have protection of your individual rights, and that the optimal way, the way where your rights are going to be less violated than any other way, is with a limited government. Now, I know that you and other anarchists disagree with that, and so that's fine. But this is the basis for our country, and the basis for our prosperity and success is that's the source.
So, would you say that your position is that there are some things that if you're living in a society with a government, even small, there are some things that cannot be voluntary, like such as, like I said, certain services. Those you cannot be you can't decide if you're going to voluntarily participate in them or not. These like there has to be some kind of coercion at some level. Is that what you
Well,
would you say that's
if there's a government, there's going to be coercion. The issue is, when is it proper? Now, I think if the people have agreed to constitute a government like they did in the Constitutional Convention, of course, they agreed to pay for that service. And I don't think there's anything wrong as long as the service is limited to protecting the individual rights of the citizens. When it deviates from that, as it has, it's wrong. And I fight against it and try to reverse that trend back to where it should be, which is a limited government.
would you say the government as it is now, not as it should be in your opinion or as it once was, but the government as it is now, would you say that it engages in certain things that can be called protection rackets, such as an organized crime entity would, like we think of like the mafia in the 1930s and everything? Would you say the government participates in things like that?
Well, the government's doing all sorts of bad things. I mean,
I'm
the
sorry,
list, the list is very long.
that specifically.
A protection racket. I said I've been railing against redistribution of wealth, and I don't know, a big proportion of my interviews, like with Bernie Sanders, for example, was on redistribution of wealth, and Harry Reid that you saw, and so yeah.
Well, maybe I'm sorry. Maybe I should clarify, such as things about licensing or a lot of fees, statutes regulating commerce, and a lot of things that I think some people would say favor one group over another for certain things. I mean, these all seem to be like related to protection rackets. Like licensing, I think, is a big one.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I like the government's in the business of licensing all sorts of professions and services. Basically, the people that favor this legislation are trying to limit the supply so they can keep the prices up. And so I'm against that. That's not a proper function of the government.
So why the so I mean why that kind of brings up the question is a lot of people tend to they criticize well lobbyists are bad and this and that, but I think a lot of people act in self-interest, and I would say that a lot of people seem to get upset when they hear about lobbyists and this and that, which I think is kind of almost kind of a protection type of thing. It's favoring, it maybe not a protection racket, but it's favoring one group at the expense of another, like you said, to artificially do things. Um, I mean, everyone seems to always flock to the government. The government should do this. The government should do that. But at the end of the day, isn't that because they know that there's this agency that can use violence to do things for people to get their way?
Well, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people believe in unlimited government. They think mistakenly that they're willing to take their chance and let other people rip them off if they have the right to rip the other people off. So